You're watching World Championship Wreckage, brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Don't forget to like and subscribe. In today's episode, Hall and Nash in WCW. And did you know Bobby the Brain Heenan knew who the third man was all along?
I have a feeling who that third man's going to be.
All right, tell us.
Take your headset off, I'll tell you. I don't believe that. It could happen. It could happen.
Boy, would that be big or what?
Watch, I could be right about this.
That could be the biggest news ever.
Something smells funny to me here.
What smells funny to you?
I don't know. There's something about this hostile takeover I don't like. It just isn't.
You think there's something behind the scenes going on that we're not aware of?
Definitely. You can believe that. I'm telling you, that name,
Well, Stinger Splash, that name, if it comes to light, if that third man is who you say it is, only thing I can tell you, fans, is be with us. You won't believe what you're going to see this Sunday at Bash of the Beach.
And it's no coincidence these comments were made during a Sting match. As we all know, there was a chance all the way to the last second that it may not have been Hogan. But what would Sting as the third man look like?
Sting! Like Sting is still crazed and dazed and confused and whacked out. Even though he's up to wrap this.
Yes, Joker Sting was thought of before the Crow Sting. So Joker Sting was to be the third man in the NWO. Isn't that correct, Sting?
Oh, no, 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 no.
But who would have been insane enough to even mention Sting being the third man in the first place? I wonder.
I'm insane. I gotta tell you, whoa, I gotta tell you, there's something that's exhilarating about being insane.
Good evening, everybody, and another golden intro by our wonderful producer, Jay Knows Wrestling. As always, welcome to World Championship Wreckage here on the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. I am your friendly neighborhood DadHat wearing wrestling fan, Justin, a.k.a. DadHat Wrestling, joined always by my buddy, one state over, the Will Gray from Botch Spots and Chair Shots. And then joining us tonight, buddy that I have known for a very, very long time, get to spend every Wednesday night with them as part of the Russ Talk Wolfpack, the Ginger Ninja Jaxbo. Boys, how's it going tonight?
It's going pretty good. Thank you for having me. I'm
Always,
excited.
man. Will, how are you?
Fantastic.
You know, we're about to talk about one of my favorite things ever in wrestling. So, well, at least part of it. So, a little backstory, guys. You're going to get some bonus stuff from us soon, because the poll this week, this has never happened. Will's topic and my topic, we tied exactly.
Who saw it happen? I mean, I can't even catch a win. We get a tie instead.
We get a tie. So that'll give each of us one in the win column for both of us. So we will be recording that WCW Heels episode soon and getting that out as well. But I just happen to already have all my stuff for this one not already kind of written down. So I thought we'd go ahead and knock this out, recording this later in the evening. So my energy is trying to stay up here, because after this, I'm going to bed. But we're talking about one of my favorite topics of all time, at least the start of it. The NWO to me is, I think, what kept me a wrestling fan. Like, I grew up watching it when I was little. I think the NWO is what kept me there and made me enjoy wrestling into my later teens, early adulthood. But we're starting at the beginning here. And we're starting with just the arrival of Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in WCW up to Bash at the Beach 96. For both of you, Hall and Nash, first memories, was it Oz and Diamond Stud? Was it Razor and Diesel? Was it Hall and Nash and WCW? First memories of these two, to the best of your recollection.
You can lead off, Jaxbo, yeah.
I just want to mention Oz is probably one of Kevin Nash's best gimmicks he's ever had.
The fake head that he took off in the ring to reveal the badly sprayed in gray hair. Yes.
I was a young whippersnapper, but I remember vaguely them as Diesel and Razor way before they were in WCW.
Yeah.
Like I knew them when they were in the quote unquote the adjective play before they were playing with the big boys.
Yeah.
By 96, I'd grown up watching WCW. So when they came over, they were the WWF guys that had came over, that whole invasion, they're here thing. But by that point in 96, I was almost 11 years old. So I was old enough to be a channel flipper some. I wasn't quite there yet. Attitude Era, I was going back 50-50. But I was still watching a lot more WCW at this point. So when Hall and Nash showed up, it was definitely like when Flair left in 91 to go the other way.
Yeah.
It was like them coming over to this side of the fence now. So it was a tit for tat when Flair packed his ball up and left. Now Hall and Nash are coming back to this side, and they're the guys invading us. So it was kind of a weird point for a young wrestling fan.
Yeah, I was not a big channel flipper at this time. So when this first happened, I was like, I know y'all, but I don't know y'all at the same time. Like I knew where you had been, but I didn't know a lot about Razor and Diesel. I learned that later going back and watching stuff because I was WCW is what I watched until, just like you will, channel flipper in the main Attitude Era. But it still drove the point across. So where we're starting on this is right after the infamous curtain call for WWF. Scott Hall was in Madison Square Garden the night before on a Sunday. The next night, May 27th, 1996. So we're right here right past the anniversary when we are recording this. And Scott Hall interrupts a match. Trivia question for you two. Do you remember the wrestlers that were wrestling in the match that Scott Hall interrupted?
Was one of them Ming?
No. If either of you get this right, I'm going to be like, holy shit.
Was it a Chris Canyon match?
No.
Okay.
Names that I don't know if we will ever say again on this podcast.
I just went with Canyon.
Harry Horowitz.
Yeah.
No. It was a match between Steve Dahl and the Mauler.
Oh, the Mauler, the long. I have no fucking clue who those people are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, wait.
The only person
Steve
in the equation. The only person in the entire equation for this match that you will recognize was the Mauler was being escorted to the ring by Colonel Robert Parker. That's the only person's name that you'll recognize.
He was in my top 10 list for best WCW managers.
He was. Which is kind of shitty in the long run because they're playing it up like this is the debut of the Mauler and he doesn't even get to finish his match. So I will say this though, you watch documentaries and like whether it be from like A&E or you watch from things that the WWE has put out themselves on like Peacock or the network and everything. You think of that match between Steve Dahl and the Mauler and Hall interrupting being this a short match and there he comes to view. It's a full-on good length match. Like rewatching it, I'm like, man, I don't remember this match being that long. They cut to a commercial, and then as they're coming back from commercial, that's when Hall is coming down the steps in the arena. So of course Scott Hall comes down. He comes down. If you're looking at your television screen, the left side crosses clear over to the right side, comes over, jumps over the guardrail, and cuts to me one of the most historic promos in all of pro wrestling. Not the best promo because he's still playing up that Razor gimmick and everything. And Razor definitely had that cadence of there's long pauses between what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Because I'm also trying to do an accent at the exact same time. So great promo altogether, but it's difficult to watch. Here we are, however many years later, watching it, but still historic promo. One thing that I caught rewatching the entire promo this time that I did not catch. Well, actually, it's not in the promo. It's actually later in the night. We'll get to that. But what did you guys remember the first time, or what did you guys think seeing this person who was just on WWF television and now here he is on the rival station? Like, Will, you mentioned 11 years old. Jax is around the same age as both of us. Like, it's not like the internet was a thing when we were reading dirt sheets. Like, did it feel like, oh crap, WWF was invading to you? Was it, no, there's no way that can happen. This is clearly a storyline. Was it somebody from that company can't be under contract and be on the show? Like, what did you guys think at the time when you first saw it?
I was just old enough to really start getting the idea that these guys weren't going from company to company. WCW guys weren't on my TV for WWF. I was just starting to get old enough to understand that. So for Scott Hall to show up on the TV, and I don't remember exact words on the promo, but it was something along the lines of, you know who I am, you just don't know why I'm here.
Yeah.
And that was just enough to make a curious 11-year-old kid go, is he talking about the other guys? Like, is he talking about WWF on WCW TV? And for, 10 and a half, 11-year-old Will, I was like, oh God, because I was just getting old enough to realize that wasn't something they did. I was old enough to realize that now. They didn't talk about Shawn Michaels and those guys on WCW and vice versa, but this time they did. Scott Hall referenced, you know who I am. You just don't know why I'm here. And I was like, oh, man. So it was amazing.
Jax?
I remember my great-grandmother getting very mad at the TV because she said, she swore up and down that WWF was coming in to take over and they were going to ruin the good product that is WCW. Because she was an NWA.
Yeah.
Memphis and
God bless your grandmother.
Yeah. I mean, I've always grew up around wrestling. Like I don't remember a memory without it. But I was still at that point going, what are they doing? Like what's going?
You were just on the other channel. What are you doing here?
I'm like, I know who that is. I don't know why you're there though.
Yeah.
You're totally right.
Yeah. So Scott's here. Of course, he's saying, you know who I am, but you don't know I'm here. They're not giving a name. He's not saying anything. He leaves the ring. Of course, this breaks up the match going on.
Poor
and
Mahler.
Poor little debut. But then he comes back at the end of the night to confront Bischoff, and WCW had that comment. I always thought it was so funny. The commentators that were looking, their backs were to the ring, so they were clearly looking at monitors, but that's just how it was. Or they turned around to watch the ring and call the matches, and just turned around to face the camera so it looked pretty with the ring behind them. But Hall comes out, and this is the part that I mentioned that I'd never caught before that he said. He says to Bischoff, quote, "We are coming down here." So now they're really alluding from New York down south to WCW. We're coming down here. He also does something that's very taboo at the time. he mentions the dirt sheets. He mentions us like this is a shoot. This you're not gonna find this on the dirt sheets. And I'm sure as a kid watching this, I was like over my head, didn't even get it because again, dirt sheet. I mean, I don't know. I much older. And the first dirt sheets I read were all online. It wasn't Meltzer and his newsletter that you were getting, paper copies or anything like that. But it was just Scott. It was just Scott starting it off, which I want to ask you both because we know how this goes. Is it more impactful for Scott to debut first and then then Nash come a couple weeks later, or would it have been better had they both shown up together the first night? Had they waited like 2 weeks?
Go ahead, Jax.
I would say, looking back at it, it was done so perfectly. I think rushing it with both of them there back to back might have took away the shock and awe of long-term storytelling.
Okay.
So I think it was actually done perfect.
I agree 1,000%. If Nash had shown up first, Diesel had not been very long removed from holding the Winged Eagle. You know what I mean? He was just the champion on the other channel.
Yeah.
So if they debut him first, then it's going to take the shine away from Hall showing up, who was the Intercontinental Champion, but that's not the same as being the face of the company and being the guy with the strap. And Kevin Nash had just recently been the guy with the strap as Diesel. So I think introducing Hall first allowed him to raise the suspicion of who is the next person and who could possibly be. If there's a him and there's a we, what does a we mean? How many people is it? How many people's coming down from New York and Connecticut with it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, you look back. I mean, I've gone back, and even though I wasn't watching it religiously live, WWF, you look back, and if you were one that watched both religiously then, you really could have gone ahead and put the pieces together and thought Sean Waltman could be as the 1, 2, 3 kid, but she's going to show up next behind Hall, because they had tagged, even though they feuded before then, they tagged that's a clear option. Shawn Michaels could have been one. So I agree with you both. I just wanted to pose that question because we get Hall again by himself another week later before Nash. So Hall is there 2 weeks before Nash shows up. So we go to the very next week, which is June 3rd. And it's treated, you can tell it's treated well and as a main event deal because it's done as the very last segment of the night for the majority of this entire build-up. So June 3rd, Hall shows up at the end talking to Bischoff up at the commentator's booth right after a match, but this time Sting comes up. And they're trading insults back and forth. Sting has the famous "You're in the jungle, baby" comment, and slaps Scott Hall. And Hall says that next week he's got a big surprise for them. Which, of course, looking back on it now, you're like, I feel like then, had I been more of a channel switcher, I might have been like, who's big in WWF? I would have been like, okay, either Diesel showing up or Yoko.
Yeah, there weren't. Yeah,
or maybe Taker, but I doubt it. So it's weird. It's weird that we get this. I will say this: WWE does a good job, in their documentaries and everything, of how they line it up. It's how they piece together this build up. But I mean, I didn't realize when looking back on it that there was 2 weeks of Hall before we get to Nash. So they do a good job setting that up. And then we get to June 10th, and that's where we get the first look together of the Outsiders. And they haven't even been given the Outsiders name yet, which I still think is one of my favorite names of a tag team ever, is the Outsiders. So we're June 10th, end of the show again. And do you guys feel like it should have been the end, or is this something that you think that could have been sprinkled in throughout the show, or does it help make the idea of it being a hostile takeover if it is at the end of every episode?
Jax?
I would have to. I like it being at the end, going back and watching it, because I mean, back then you didn't have the fast forwards and the pause and like YouTube. So you sat there and you watched it from beginning to end to see, am I going to miss it? Are they going to do it when I'm like, you didn't, it made you not want to change the channel.
One of the things I appreciate most, and this is 37-year-old Will talking, not 11-year-old Will talking, is that Ted Turner did a really good job of whoever was holding the pencil and writing the story and holding the book. They kept a lot of the old school traits of an old booker, where they would start the show with a tease and then they would finish the show with whatever started it. And it was like the bookends to the story. And you see a lot of that reminiscent in the way Triple H books, and he took it from Dusty, and Dusty got it when he was in WCW, and they took it from Crockett, and it goes all the way back. And it's like the old tried and true that if it's done right 1,000 times, then it's probably a good way to do it, right? And that's what Ted Turner was good at when he bought WCW, is he let wrestling minds run the business. And they kept really good traditional wrestling shows in WCW. And that's one of my favorite things about it. And this Scott Hall story is a perfect example of that, because they would start an episode and then they would end with Hall, and then they would start it back up at the beginning of the next episode and then have a normal episode, and then Hall would do something, and then it led to Nash, and it was just like storytelling.
Mm-hmm. I think one thing that weirds me out, and it didn't back then, because again, I wasn't a channel switcher, but now it bothers me, is looking back, is you've got quote unquote Razor and Diesel invading, and they're in these street clothes and everything. And yeah, I'm not thinking, yeah, they're going to show up in their gear. They're not going to be in like trunks and, you know, his Razor vest, and Diesel with his tassels and everything. But like when Nash debuted with the baseball cap and the polo and jeans, I'm just like, it just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know why, but it's something that bothers me still to this day. Like, Hall, not so much, because he's still, I mean, he's in the denim on denim, the denim vest and the denim shorts and the military boots. And
it was
everything.
Still on brand, even though it wasn't straight ring gear, right?
But like Nash debuts, and I'm just like, are you on your way to a like youth minister Nash? Like, are you going to
does your kid have an image like a U10 basketball game or something?
Yeah, like
are you coaching your kid's little league team?
Yeah, like there's something, like, I don't know. It's just so weird with that, because you think of Diesel being a badass, and I mean, there was always some leather that tied into like the Mack truck type of thing. So it just, I don't know. That just, you're like, as an adult and knowing now what they were doing on the channel, that bothered me. But with his debut, he really, in his promo, he plays up the youth movement versus the fossils that were in WCW, playing up that WCW is where the ancient relics come to play, and that there's no one that can step up to them, because look, they're in their prime right now, and there's no one that can step up to them. It fit well, I feel like, in the time, but at the same time, looking at it, like, Sting was still well in his prime. He wasn't super old, but I guess it felt that way because he had been there since the freaking mid 80s. Like,
I'm sitting here thinking about it. We just talked about it. When did Sting beat Vader for the WCW title? That was 92? 92? So he was what, like, by 96? 96, he was 8 years in his career?
Yeah, I mean, 1990 was when he first beat Ric Flair.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's 6. So, I mean, but he debuted 80, I think.
86,
Did
87?
he just celebrate, like, this 50th year in the business or something?
So I mean, he'd been there
He's
for a
been a
while,
long
but
time.
Sting didn't feel like a fossil as Nash is describing it. Others in the company, yes, the Hogans, the Savages, even though they were still doing great, the Flairs and everything. But I mean, it works. It's a storyline that still even works today. Look at just last night on NXT, Baron Corbin talking about the youth and moving up to the main roster too quickly and their attitudes. And he's someone who's like a veteran. So, I mean, it can be used both ways, but it's still a type of storyline that's used even to this day. And it's a smart one. After this, we move to I mean, if you're putting together a highlight reel of the NWO, this is going to be part of it. Great American Bash 1996. It's a segment done right before the main event. We don't get it. As part of the very end of the show. But Bischoff brings them out. He announces that because they've been saying they want a match. They want the three best in WCW. And Bischoff says that he's been in the offices of WCW and they have their match, but it's not until the next pay-per-view, Bash at the Beach 96. But the first thing that he has to clear, because now Real World is happening and WCW has to do this, he has to clarify, which to me slightly diminishes the storyline, but not really. I feel like if it was happening now I'd call BS on it, but as a kid, I was like, who cares? But he has to ask them, do you work for the WWF? And they both say no. Hall does a great job of covering it up, saying, forget about the past. This is about now. What do y'all think? Does that take away from the storyline having to justify that, no, they do not work for the other company?
It bolsters it. It's like when you get arrested for, like, when a cop's undercover and you're like, man, if you're a cop, you got to tell me, like, that's entrapment if you don't. Like, it's like that. Like, do you work for the other guy? Are you here to screw us over? Like, what's happening? I feel like it helped make the story mean more, because if that made it go, okay, maybe they don't know what's going on. Maybe this isn't a work and this is like for real. And these guys did just show up to take over. Like, I liked that, adding that little bit of realism. Because like we said, at this point in 96, you don't get a lot of WWF mentions on TV, short of Medusa dropping the belt in the garbage. And that's still almost not quite a year away. That was into 96, I think. But yeah, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you didn't get a lot of that at this point.
Jax?
I agree.
Yep.
I mean, I think it was. I mean, it's hard to go after Will.
Yeah.
He kind of like steals it away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's why I usually go Jax, go first.
Yeah. Will is the most profoundly spoken one of the show. Like I'm the like volleyball. I'm gonna set it up so Will can spike it right down.
But outside of food and wrestling, I sound like a babbling idiot. You guys know. You guys both know me well enough to know that.
So we continue on at Great American Bash, and Hall is persistent of tell us who the three people are. But again, he's alluding that there is a third man. Don't know who it is. Our surprise buddy, as he calls him. But just is on Bischoff to tell him who the three men that they're going to be facing at Bash at the Beach are. And Bischoff says, you'll find out tomorrow on Nitro. Hall then punches Bischoff right in the gut. And then Nash takes him, jackknife powerbombs him off of the stage through tables, which is it. I mean, I remember first time I saw it, again, I didn't get a lot of pay-per-views live as a kid. So I saw this either on Nitro as like in a Nitro back in the day. You didn't see clips, you saw still frames. So I either saw it as a still frame or I saw it when I rented the VHS like months later when Movie Max or Blockbuster had it the first time.
Movie Max.
What's
up, Southern Family Video Shop that I haven't heard since the 90s?
Movie Max.
That's like a movie
Max.
Gallery. There were movie galleries out here. Galleries.
We had those. We had family. We had Family Video. we had Movie Max, we had not Cinemax, Cine something, but I can't remember what. But Movie Max, yeah, Movie Max was literally like 3 minutes from my house. Like we would go every Friday, and it was literally like I would get a movie, I would get a wrestling VHS, and I would get a video game. But then as I got older, my mom would cut me off and be like, "You can get a movie and a wrestling VHS, or you can get a or you can get a movie and a video game, because you can't play a video game all the way through, or as much as you can, because you only got it for 2 or 3 days. Like, so pick wrestling or video games, and just depending on the week, on the Friday and what I felt like. But it gets kind of forgotten here. Like everybody remembers Austin versus McMahon. This was a wrestler going after. I mean, he was a commentator. Wasn't really alluded to that he was in charge of WCW, but Bischoff did do it first. He was being that person in charge, taking bumps and being involved physically well before McMahon. Do you think if Bischoff hadn't done this, Vince would have? Or do you think if Bischoff just said, like, if this never happened, would Vince have ever actually gotten physical with Austin?
I think that would eventually came to it.
Okay.
But I think what this did was get Vince's eyes on WCW a hell of a lot more. Because at first it's, hey, Vince, I'm in the wrestling business. Well, good. I'm in the entertainment business. Yeah. All right. Hey, Vince, I'm going to take your guys from you now. And Vince finally went, shit, I got to compete. It's either man up or go home. And I mean, we all know how it ended.
I mean, other than, say, Brett and Shawn at this time and Taker, these were your two of your biggest guys jumping over. I mean, that were on TV every week in the WWF. Like, key players. It's not like,
less than a year before, it was your world champion and your IC champion.
Yeah, it's
like that's how important Razor and Diesel were.
It wasn't Doink the Clown. It wasn't Doink the Clown and say, I don't know, some like you know what I'm talking about, like jumping over. These are main event players, like the IC title. Yeah,
like, Brooklyn Brawler and Duke the Dumpster jumping over to Nitro.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's not that. No disrespect to
them,
but I mean, at this time, the IC title, when Razor had it, meant something. Meant like it was your this next person is gonna be like IC title meant next big thing for them is the world title. And so I mean, this is 2 big main event players coming in. It always felt weird to me that we just got like an update, like their first pay-per-view is not a match. It's just continuing the storyline, which I get. They're trying to do long-term storytelling and booking, but it's just, I don't know. To me, it just feels weird. Like, but I mean, they did need that extra time because this was only 4 weeks into the storyline. So I get it. And of course, at this time, the third man has not been decided upon. Like they're trying to figure that out. After one thing that I like that they continued to do was after this segment, the main event happened and it was Luger challenging the Giant for the world title. Luger checks on Bischoff. Like they're attending to Bischoff as Luger's coming down, and Luger walks over, checks on him. Like it made it feel so much more real because it's like, okay, this guy really did get hurt. Like we're showing this. We're not like, okay, well, we're panning away from it. Like, all right, cool. It got cleaned up really quick before the main event. No, this person is injured and is hurt going through these tables. Like we're taking care of him, but the show must go on. Like, sorry, they don't pay attention to what's going on here. Move on here. It just added to that realism, which with the NWO was such a big part of moving into that realism thing. The weird thing about during all this, and we touched a little bit about this when we talked about when we did our Chris Canyon episode, is one of these weeks when I was rewatching it, you get the vignette of coming soon, Glacier. And I'm like, I watched it and I was like, coming soon, what the NWO destroys. Because like it is. Like the NWO happens and that type of character, dead in the water.
Those
Dead in
Mortal
the water.
Kombat comic book characters are gone.
Yeah. So like seeing that as like a vignette of what's coming soon, it hurt. It hurt seeing that, knowing what was coming up. So we go to the next night on Nitro. Bischoff is not there. We've got one of my favorites of all time, Mean Gene Okerlund, that says that the WCW committee has named 6 people that could potentially face the Outsiders and their mystery opponent. Those 6 being, of course, Sting, Luger, and Savage, who it ends up being, but the other 3 being the Giant, Hulk Hogan, and Ric Flair. So, it again, looking at this, it's weird because we're trying to talk about it, about also like how we were feeling in the moment, but also looking at it now, all these years later. Looking at it now as 37-year-old DadHat, you've got Savage, you've got Luger, who were just in WWF. I mean, Savage has been there for a couple years. This is 96. So, I mean, Luger's only been around for a little bit here in WCW. So, again, it's one of those, like, a part of me would have been like, if I was my age now watching this, I would have been like, one of them returning because they were in WWF. But, I mean, thankfully they didn't. But I almost wish, but yet there were other storylines going on. Flair and the newly formed Horsemen of Arn, Benoit, and Mongo. They were doing stuff with the Dungeon of Doom, which ties up the Giant. There were other storylines going on, but I almost would have preferred if it had been a team of. Even though Flair was in WWF, he's WCW. I would have preferred a solid WCW based team. Flair, Sting. I don't know who my third one would be. Maybe I can't even say a Steiner because they
Steamboat.
Yeah. But he wasn't really prominent right at that time.
I guess that point he had kind of worked his way back out. He wasn't quite, but he was one of those NWA guys that came over.
But like I would have preferred a much set WCW team than 2 of the 3 being people who had just been in the other company. Unless y'all think that it was done that way by design to think, hey, is one of these 2 gonna turn on them and they're the third guy?
You've got me thinking who the fuck the third like NWA WCW team member should have been besides Flair and Sting. I'm sitting here racking my brain now going, you're right, because Luger and Savage both held the title in the 90s in the other company, so they're not WCW purebreds. Like, neither one of them came through. Luger came through the territories, but kinda. Yeah. Savage was an outlaw with the Poffos. Like, I'm sitting here trying to think, like, who the other WCW NWA guy would have been. Ron Simmons?
Yeah, I could see that.
Ron Simmons would have been a good pick.
But not really prominent right now during this time.
Because he won the title in 92. 4 years later, he had went back to the mid-card.
Yeah, and I'm like, we'll get there, but one of the last things
Dusty.
Dusty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As
Dusty
a legend,
could have been the third.
Legend representing. You could have done that. Yeah. Because like we'll get to this point, but like one of the last things they do is that where they're literally standing off against the entire WCW locker room. And I'm remembering, and I just watched that less than 8 hours ago. But it was like they talk about like who's coming out. It's the Steiners, it's DDP, Marcus Bagwell. Like it's not ones you're gonna put in a main. Like DDP was not a main eventer yet. He was still I've got the giant cigar. I've got a couple gimmicks I need to shake off before like he's at that main event level.
He was Diamond Dallas Page before he was Diamond Dallas Page. When the diamond meant more than everything else.
Yeah. So Dusty. I would go with Dusty. Like I almost would prefer. yes, knowing now what we know with Hogan being the third man, that leg drop on Savage does mean stuff because it adds layers to it. You've got from the mega powers and everything from like back in the 80s and everything.
Long-term
Yeah,
storytelling.
I mean, you get that and everything, but it still bothers me because it's not a WCW team. It's not. Like, it's just not. But that's who's chosen. It's not like we can time travel and make it different, or can we? If only. That's Justin gets a time machine. What do? I'm changing the history of the NWO. The NWO now still runs supreme. It beats Rome. It beats that storyline. Beats the Bloodline storyline now. But those three get chosen for Bash at the Beach, which moves us to the next week. That's a weird week because we don't get anything from Hall or Nash at all on there. There is no, but I mean, hey, they got a crap ton of money for less weeks coming to WCW, so it's already starting to show.
Guaranteed contracts.
Yep. That's what they gave to this business. That's what they'll go down for, other than the NWO. So we get to June 24th, and we get a promo between Sting, Luger, and Randy Savage. And I believe it's Savage says, "We are united by the paint of the Stinger," which is that's how you tie it into the WCW side. Sting is the heart of that company at that time. And for most fans, it's a debate between Sting and Flair. Who was the heart of WCW?
And that's where we disagree, my friend. I love the shit out of you, but it's Ric Flair 9 times out of 10, in my opinion. And I know you're a Sting guy.
See, I always thought the Yeti was the heart of WCW.
Unwrap that heart of gold.
He was just a hugger, man. He just liked giving hugs.
Yeah. But I mean, I like that tie-in to like that grounds it in the WCW. We're united in the paint of the Stinger because Macho and Luger are all wearing face paint, just like Sting. Luger looks like the Ultimate Warrior.
Yes, he did, dude. So awkwardly.
It was like the nose, the two, like it was. I'm like, what'd you do? Copy Jim Hellwood's like last appearance? Like, it was very awkward. It was very, very awkward. But also very awkward in that promo. Luger almost says WWF.
Yes, that little stutter.
Does he?
Yes, it is clear as day. Like he's not talking about them coming from there. He's talking about WCW. He's like, here in the WCW, like it is a clear, and Mean Gene's holding the microphone like,
you stupid motherfucker.
Yeah. But I mean, clear as day.
One job.
I will clip that for you. I'll see if I can clip that and send it to you, Jax. But it's clear as day. And then we get to what actually I talked about a little bit on the Wolfpack tonight was my match of the week because I watched the entire thing. A really cool triple threat tag team match for the world tag team titles at the time. Sting and Luger, the tag champions, defending against Harlem Heat and the Steiner Brothers in a 6-man triple threat. And that just happened to be in Charlotte, North Carolina. I can't yell too bad because both kids are asleep, and I'm pretty sure my wife. But some shenanery happens, and the outsiders come from the crowd carrying baseball bats, and the entire Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department invades the ring and holds off the Steiners and Sting and Luger against 2 men holding baseball bats, which Nash has said into the ground that Bischoff praised, and he was like, do you know what the appearance is right now? 2 guys from the other company with baseball bats are more threatening than your top guys. Like it, I mean, and it's true. It's very, very true. But we get them backing out and everything. And then we get to the last appearance before Bash at the Beach. July 1st, the go home Nitro before Bash at the Beach. And the Outsiders, it's about midway through the show. The Outsiders come down. It is halfway through the show because halfway is when Bischoff, it's hour 2, Bischoff and Heenan are the commentary because WCW would do that classic. We're trading off commentary teams. But they come down.
At least they don't try to cram 4 people in a fucking booth like AEW does.
That's true too. You can't even fit in the booth. You're going to be in the rolly chair outside the booth.
Yeah.
Don't fall off the stage.
They were going to bring in 2 guest commentators for each match.
Yeah. But we get them coming through the crowd. Again, it's weird for Nash because, I mean, he looks so relaxed in his street clothes, his hair tied back in a ponytail. And I'm just like, dude, what? You realize, I don't know. It's just like, that's what I think takes me, like, he takes me away from, and I like Kevin Nash. Like, I'm a fan of the NWO and the Outsiders, but I'm like, it just takes me away from, like, you're not Diesel. You're not Big Daddy Cool coming in here. You're youth minister Nash coming in to sit at ringside.
Are we gonna go get ice cream after church on Sunday?
Seriously, like that's what it is. I don't know. Hall again. He drips the machismo. Like he's kept the still the look, but now has dropped the the Chico and all that. Like he's dropped all of that for the lawsuit and everything from WWF at this point. But they come out, they've bought tickets. We get shout out to a fixture of WCW, Doug Dillinger, head of security for WCW, checking tickets, and Nash of course is playing like we're here to see the big boys, which was super fun. But we get Eric Bischoff back at the commentator desk, and this is the first time that we get a name for either of them. He calls out Nash. He straight looks at the camera and says, "I want to say something to you, Nash." And it's about because it's the first time that Eric Bischoff has been back since being powerbombed at the Great American Bash. I forgot about this, that he mentioned the name, and I didn't like it. Wait until the pay-per-view, or don't say the name. Like, I was like, man, that would have bothered me. Like, I don't want to know. Like, they're still outsiders. Like, they don't have names yet. But small thing that doesn't really matter. And then we get the Kevin Nash with a live mic because they've now gone through the crowd and are trying to get up to the commentator's booth. And then all of the cops swarm him. You get Kevin Nash with a live mic saying, "Get the fuck off me." And it is not even edited on Peacock. You can still hear him say it. They will bleep out WWF, but not "get the fuck off me." And then the entire WCW locker room pours out. I mean, it's made. They do feel super strong, but it's only taking away Great American Bash. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 nitros, and 5 because they're not on one. It's only 5 nitros building up to this. Do you guys think it should have been longer to allude to the third man, to maybe grow it a little bit more, maybe drop some hints like I don't know, like they could have easily dropped some things like some we're going to count 1, 2, 3, or hey, don't let it be a heartbreak, like things like that to like make you allude to who it is. Like, do you think it should have been spread out more than 5 weeks?
It's so hard to tell on my end because it's like everything about it like turned out like they caught lightning in a bottle.
I know. I
mean, but could they have, with that lightning in a bottle, could they have probably drug it out a little bit longer? Yeah. I probably would have. I'd probably drug it out as long as I could have. And I'd hinted to everything under the sun. Like, you're a dead man. And like, just like you were saying, I'd hint to everything under the sun.
Hint to as many things that you could have said.
Many.
Well,
He's a dentist.
Fucking Isaac yank him out of nowhere. I think the way they did it, I agree. I'm gonna echo everything Jax just said. I think it was perfect. So looking back on it, you're like, how do you change what was perfection? I agree. They could have teased it more, but the fact they waited 5 weeks to say their name, and then it took 6 weeks to find out who the third person was, and then they came out without having a third opponent or a third teammate, and they were like, "We'll take all three of them, just the two of us. We don't need our third member."
yeah.
I feel like the tiny little drops, they did it. They did an invasion without having to call it an invasion. They didn't have to reference WWF or Razor Ramon or Diesel. They didn't even have to say these guys' names for 5 weeks. And you still knew what was happening.
And the crowd the crowd is in several cities are shouting Diesel, Diesel. Like,
yeah, it was brilliant. And I think the only thing they could have done, looking back on it, hindsight's 2020, is I agree with Jax. They could have milked it more. They could have made that third guy be anyone. Like, that's 100% agree with him.
Yeah.
I'd had you believing that bitch was going to be stone cold by the end of the day.
For fucking real. Stunning Steve is on his way back. He wants that U.S. heavyweight title.
Fuck Eric Bischoff.
But then the next thing we get is Bash at the Beach 96, which I'm sure that could probably be, a whole episode all to its own. But
Oh, yeah.
we get the classic main event. The two of them come out I love Scott Hall's Outsiders gear. Love it. Like, it's up there for me on, like, if I was going to own ring-worn gear, Scott Hall's 96 Bash at the Beach gear. Nash in the all red was always so weird to me. Like, break it up. The black, you can do black and red a little bit. But we get that. We get the match, which is I've said it on other episodes. It's still weird for me with Nash in the WCW ring because he takes 2 steps and he goes from rope to rope because it's so small.
Tiny 16-foot ring versus a 20-foot ring.
Yeah, it's just weird. But of course, and then we get Hogan, which, as you saw in the intro, Bobby the Brain Heenan is alluding to it on the Saturday night show right the night before, that it might be Hogan and everything. And what's so interesting about this is Hogan they mentioned Hogan when Hall and Nash both mentioned Hogan their first appearances. Hogan is brought up as a choice to maybe be one of the 3, but Hogan is away filming Thunder in Paradise at this time, so he's not even really involved in everything. So they build it up with Hogan not even being a thought at this time, and him, like, other than Bobby the Brain ruining what side is he on? Dusty and Shivani's reaction of Dusty, especially, Hulk Hogan is in the building, because he hadn't been there, like, means more to me now, having gone back, because I didn't remember that Hogan hadn't been there for weeks.
This was a good return.
Yeah.
And it was a perfect return because people were like, oh shit, he's back. Mm-hmm. Is he going to help WCW? And you're right. Tony Schiavone fucked that up.
You mean Heenan?
Or Heenan, rather, yeah.
Yeah. What size you on? And you hear just the other ones be like,
shut the fuck up,
Bobby.
Yeah.
But yes, so that is going to be where we wrap up. This is the start of talk of the NWO. I'm sure there's so many more layers to the NWO, from what the initial 3 did to the expansion to the demise to the saturated NWO. There's like 7 episodes we can do just on.
Does anyone know the official number of NWO members?
I think it's 36.
Will would know that, yes. Will is the one that figured out how much money Jeff Jarrett has spent on guitars in his career for me.
Uh-huh.
And never drew a dime.
Yeah, not a single. The funny part about it, Jack, you'll appreciate this. When I was doing my research on that question, I found out Jeff Jarrett said WCW was buying name brand guitars.
Well, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah. just for him to smash them. They were buying name brand. He said they were getting Gibson and Fender acoustic guitars just for him to smash them. And he was like, I had smashed like First Act little $50 guitars. And then when I got the WCW, they were handing me like $500 and $600 acoustic Fenders to go out to the ring and smash.
And we wonder why they went under or they started losing money. But let's take care before we do shout out. Actually, let's do shout outs first. Jax, where can we find you and what do you have going on now?
You can now find me 4 days a week over on twitch.tv/the Ginger Ninja Jaxbo 89, all one word. 4 nights a week. I'm there Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I play video games and talk about wrestling.
Yeah. What about Wednesday nights?
Wednesdays nights, I'm on the Wolfpack. Don't mess up my Wolfpack Wednesday night.
Yeah, twitch.tv/WrestleTalk Wolfpack. Myself, Ginger Ninja, Self Bet Wrestling, and the Tribal Queen Brie Stout. Will, what's going on with Botch Box Chair Shots after a very fun, successful weekend at the Crockett Cup?
First and foremost, Jax, I love you. I've missed you. I'm glad to see you. DadHat, it's always a pleasure. Crockett Cup was amazing. Amazing. I love the NWA so much, and I'm not just saying that because they paid for my tickets and stuff. Like, it was genuinely a fun time. Like, it was good to get back and see an old school wrestling show, and that was so much fun. I've got some cool interviews coming up. I just dropped Rohit Raju.
I saw that. I got to watch that tomorrow.
Former X Division champion. That was a great talk. I've got NWA superstar Alex Taylor coming up. So I've got some cool interviews on the way. Botch Bots and Chair Shots Sunday nights. Check me out.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, you can, like I say every week, check us out on Twitter, WC Wreckage Pod, where you can vote on our next episode. You can also find us on Instagram at world_championship_wreckage. Yeah, that's all those underscores. World Championship Wreckage _ between all of them. I'm tired, y'all. It's past midnight now, and I'm a dad who's tired. But check us out there. And TikTok, of course, where you can vote on our polls. Give everybody a follow on all their social medias. We love them. Give our friends, as Will would say. There's several I can shout. I've already mentioned some from the Wolfpack. Give Allison from Botch Bots and Chair Shots, the boss bitch over there, a follow as well at Just a Girl. Will, help me out here.
918.
I also like that. I was about to say 19. 918. Just a Girl 19. They're good people. And there's so many more. XLJ and B-Roll.
Of those guys.
Jay Knows Wrestling. Husky Rhodes and this Bionic Silverback Nate Slater. Like everybody, there's so many great people that help out with this channel, and I love them. And I can't appreciate their love and help and support. And for Will, who decided to take a chance and want to talk some WCW, like I can't express how appreciative I am. But let's get on to business. So one thing we're going to do, we tied, so we're going to be figuring out a time to record as a bonus episode that WCW Heels episode because it was a tie. So we both won. So why not? Let's record both. But we still got to have a poll for the next episode. I know what I'm picking, but I'm going second because it's going to throw you. Will, what do you want to throw on the poll?
I want to talk about Eric Bischoff in the 83 weeks that he beat WWE and took over the #1 spot. So that like chunk of a year, that little over a year where Eric Bischoff took over and they were the top company in the wrestling world for a little over a year.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a very good one. And I'm totally on board to talk about that. I want to talk about it. I don't want to say the icon because he's not that's Sting. I want to talk about an icon in wrestling, someone that wrestlers in later generations tried to mirror their career after, someone that reached as high as he could reach and always just fell slightly short of getting a world title. And I'm being facetious as hell. I want to talk about the Disco Inferno.
Wow. You went there.
I did.
Holy shit.
I want to go to the Disco Inferno.
Huh.
And
I'm gonna wait.
And there's a caveat with that. You had a caveat with a guest. I have a caveat for a guest as well. She is a wrestling TikToker that I will not say who yet, that informed me, and we will get more into the story, that if this ever wins the poll, I had already been thinking about doing a disco, and then I heard this, and I was like, I'm throwing it out there. Her first wrestling memory was seeing the Disco Inferno. And I told her, I'm like, you're still a wrestling fan and that's your first memory? You deserve a plaque or a medal, or as Russell Brand said, or a cuddle or something. Because that was her first wrestling memory and she's still a fan. So she will join us for the Disco Inferno episode if it wins. But yes, Disco Inferno is what I'm throwing on the poll.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a damn good one. I'm Justin. I'm Brad Camp. I'm going to win again. Fuck you.
I threw out random. No, that means, though, I have to go. Well, you do too, but more me. I have to go sit through and watch a bunch of Disco Inferno shit if it wins.
Oh.
You have to watch Ready to Rumble again because he was in it.
I've got something in my pocket. As soon as we go off air, you're going to be like, God damn it, I didn't even think about that. Just wait.
Yeah, I'll be sad. But folks, for my friend the Ginger Ninja Jaxbo, for my buddy who I get to sit and talk WCW with each and every week, the Will Gray. Look at that.
That's my pageant wave.
Pageant wave. Can we get an all pageant wave like as an outro? And for your friendly neighborhood DadHat wearing wrestling fan who's very tired and going to bed, we're going to end the show as we end every week. Wise words from the American Dream.
That's the Rose, baby.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.